Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Sam with Iland. I think I'm going to pass over to Graham. Graham, I can't hear you if you're speaking, just to let you know.
Thanks, Sam. I've done the usual COVID thing and I was muted. So thank you, Sam. So let me start again. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We've got a big gathering this morning, so expecting close to 50 people. So which is excellent. So thank you for taking the time out of your diaries to join us. I know it's a very sort of busy time really at the moment. So today, as we said, we're going to talk about, is now the right time to be removing, your service from your infrastructure, getting out of that hardware game. So I'd like to introduce myself and Sam. Some of you will know myself. My name is Graham Stead. I'm the Client Relationship Director here at CMI. So what does that mean? I mean, primarily my responsibility is to make sure that we're working closely with our clients to keep you informed of technology, changes in technology, and in how you can use that to really sort of drive, real impact into your business, and real measurable impact as well into your business. And I'm pleased to be joined today by Sam, Sam and our partner Iland, that we work very closely with. Sam, if I can pass over to you, maybe introduce yourself.
Yeah, certainly. My name's Sam Woodcock, based over here in London for Iland. Actually, kind of Senior Director of Cloud Strategy here at Iland, so I work on existing products, new products, and obviously helping folks understand kind of what Iland provide as an organisation. So it's great to join everyone today.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so really the format for today, a bit of housekeeping maybe. Sam and we'll run you through our webinar today. I'll keep an eye on the questions. So I've already had a few questions from my email that I sent out yesterday, but feel free to use the Q&A panel in your dashboard. I'll keep an eye on those, and where appropriate, I'll sort of feed them into Sam as we go through the presentation. But we've certainly got a sort of 5-minute Q&A answer section at the end. Okay, great. Over to you, Sam.
Perfect. Yeah, so today we're going to be looking at the general IT landscape. We're going to be talking about cloud in general and whether all clouds are built equally. And we're also going to be talking through the iland and CMI approach. And as Graham mentioned, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end, so post your questions. And also for the folks who stayed towards the end, we're going to be doing a prize draw for some cool trainers as well. So without further ado, I just wanted to start off and talk about the fact that, like everyone on the phone knows, we really live in this fast-paced world. I think it's got even faster in the last year or so. And really now more than ever, as you can see, businesses are relying on those IT investments that they make now and in the future, really to perform without disruption. It's important for revenue, reputation, and competitive advantage for that availability in their IT investment to perform as needed. So it's really critical and continues to be a critical piece to consider. But first, before I kind of get started, I want to look at cloud adoption in general, and by the numbers, what does it look like? So if we look at some of the recent stats in the market, the global public cloud service market is projected to reach $266 billion in 2020. In 2019, $49 billion was spent on cloud hosting, what we're talking about today. More than $1.3 trillion in IT spending is affected by the shift to the cloud by 2022. And 61% of small to medium large businesses are really adopting a multi-cloud strategy. And we're going to delve deeper into that. But as you can see, the adoption of cloud continues to accelerate. We're seeing that ourselves from the iland side, and it's a great time to be considering what cloud solutions you can leverage as a business. So let's move on and talk about why organizations make the move to cloud. What drives that behavior and drives the intention to do that? First of all, hopefully, as we speak through, some of the people on the phone may have aging hardware. Obviously, as you invest on premises in your local location, that hardware is built for a certain time period, and then that is coming to expiry. And so it's a time to look at whether we can replace this with a new solution. So this is driving that behavior to move to the cloud. Reducing cost, obviously all businesses want to do more with less, reduce their cost, and so obviously this drives the behavior again to look at options within the cloud that can help them not only provide the new IT infrastructure that they need to scale, but reduce the cost overall where possible at the same time. Obviously, cloud gives you flexibility and agility. That's a common trait of all cloud solutions, that higher flexibility allowing you to drive new behaviors within your organization and drive new revenue and opportunities as a business. So that higher flexibility is a driving force as well. Obviously, as more organizations adopt cloud, we saw the numbers. You as a business obviously want to remain competitive and innovative against your competition. And so as your competitors move to the cloud, you also are looking in that direction to remain competitive against those as well.
And Sam, I think it's important to just mention there when we talk about reducing costs, I know you're going to talk about it a little bit later on, but to be thinking about, you know, the hidden costs, not necessarily just the direct cost that you see, you know, the cost of the hardware versus the cost of a cloud subscription, really. So I'd be interested to see that later.
Yeah, certainly. So the whole overall TCO is a really critical piece to consider. It's not just the component parts, it's all of the soft costs and hidden costs that you may need to consider as well when evaluating the move from on-premises to cloud as well. So great point, and we're going to be definitely running through that as well. So 80% of folks that Gartner looked at actually were looking to eliminate the need for on-premises infrastructure. The focus of infrastructure and operation leaders was not really primarily now focused on delivering the operational side and the infrastructure side, but more to deliver the products and services to their end customers and really help them enable their organization's business strategy. So this focus, there are a large number of folks looking to eliminate that on-premises infrastructure because it's not a business differentiator. The business differentiator, which we're going to go into, is really the value that you provide at the products and services and application level. And you can really, as you move to the cloud, focus on those components versus the traditional infrastructure approach as well. 50% are also transforming to software as a service where possible as well. iland utilize SaaS applications ourselves. We see a lot of organizations leverage these where it makes sense. These are cloud services in general. So you may, as an organization, already be leveraging things like Microsoft 365, G Suite, Salesforce, for example, Expensify for expense tracking, or Workable for HR. All of these web-based applications are being adopted in terms of cloud services to, again, help you achieve the outcomes that you need in a shorter amount of time and with less cost up front as well. So we see that transformation happening with organizations considering SaaS as well. And the reality is that business critical applications and data are really no longer in one place. We talked about that 61% of SMBs who are using a multi-cloud or multi-technology approach to solve their outcomes. And so what we generally see is some services may still remain on premises where it makes sense. We don't see this being a complete rip and replace where it doesn't make sense. But for a lot of organizations, they can completely eliminate their on-premises environment. As they do that, they're shifting towards cloud providers such as iland to host their mission critical servers and services in the cloud. And again, as I just mentioned, they're leveraging SaaS where it makes sense to simply consume the functionality and service that they need, and then focus on the process and the technologies on the back end. So we really see that business critical data is spread across all of these different types of cloud solutions, and really making sure that you have seamless management, cost, budget, and other pieces in the consideration criteria is really critical. Yeah, so if we look generally at the on-premises or on-prem infrastructure challenge, we'll delve into that. So for the folks on the phone, you may see obviously continued growth as a business, ever larger maintenance and replacement cycles. These take time and energy and focus away from innovation and revenue generating activities. And so this again is a reason why folks are considering the cloud. Achieving the service levels that your business desire and that your customers desire is prohibitively expensive. As more hardware is required, more and higher SLAs are needed. To achieve that becomes more complicated and more expensive over time with a traditional approach. Obviously, security and compliance, you can't go a week in the news without seeing a security incident or the need to protect yourself from security threats as an organization. As you do business in your markets and with customers, compliance is really critical. And these things are hard to do and hard to maintain and hard to focus on. And again, this is why folks, again, are shifting towards cloud-based approaches where some of those component parts are taken care of by the cloud provider. As you may operate in different geographical regions and different multiple clouds, this becomes a challenge to deal with infrastructure, deployment, maintenance, support of that infrastructure on a global basis. And again, it takes you away focus from the revenue generating activities and the business value. And migrating traditional software into a cloud model, this can be a challenge. The good news is that providers such as ourselves and CMI can help migrate those software applications into the cloud model, but this is definitely a challenge related to on-premise infrastructure. And the reality is that infrastructure is really not a business differentiator, it's an enabler to get to the business differentiation. So if we look at kind of what that means, if that infrastructure itself is not available, it's not highly scalable, it's not highly flexible, it can hinder a business. And really, if you move to a model within the cloud that can provide you with the high levels of availability, scalability, and flexibility, you're really enabling the business to move forward without being hindered by that legacy infrastructure. And also, taking care of that legacy infrastructure means that IT teams are overburdened with non-business value, revenue-generating activities and tasks, whereas it'd be better to focus those IT teams on dealing with the applications and the innovation and the R&D to push the business forward.
Sam,
and if we look at, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was just make a point really on that. You know, that point, the infrastructure hindering, and really, if we look back to when COVID started and that rush to remote working, what we saw across our client base was exactly that. It was those clients that you know had already transitioned, you know, the core part of their infrastructures to the cloud. Maybe even telephony was sort of a cloud-based hosted sort of VoIP solution. Yes, of course, there was still disruption because they may not have had the right sort of endpoint devices for their staff to work from home, but actually once they did, which is, you know, reasonably easy to solve, they're able to access their data. So, you know, that you know, even just in this last 6 months is really what's really pushed that rush now to cloud.
Yeah, definitely, and we've seen that ourselves from a networking perspective. I think it's a great point that as you see that giant shift to I guess working from home and other pieces, having just one component part in terms of the network be flexible and scalable as needed, I guess reduces risk and also enables the business to provide that functionality to their staff and their customers as well. So great point there as well. So if you look at the traditional IT side, again, the pieces that are really not generating revenue for the business, they're really enabling those pieces. If we look at that, it's the physical facilities, it's having the relevant security and data protection technologies, it's having storage and networking and servers and software, all of these things married together to provide that platform for your applications and your business value to sit on. Again, these are things that you're taking time and focus away from with revenue generating business value activities. And if we look at the business value itself, again, it's the data that you house, it's the applications themselves, and it's the innovation. And so if we look towards in the future slides, looking to consume the traditional IT components from a cloud service provider, then you can really focus the business on those value pieces from your perspective. So if we shift towards, there's reasons to look at cloud, there's a lot of organizations adopting cloud. What are the typical concerns that you may have and that other organizations share with adopting cloud services? Well, first of all, one of the biggest things that comes up is obviously security, making sure that as I move my applications and services to the cloud, that they maintain or better the security levels that I have locally on premises. I think the good news as we move through the slides is there's a lot of great technology and services from the cloud that can really elevate the security that you provide on those baseline applications. So I'm going to run through how cloud addresses those. I think compliance has always been a historic concern, making sure that you can maintain things like GDPR compliance or specific regulatory requirements for compliance. I think if you evaluate the compliance landscape from a cloud side, generally the cloud providers generally have a larger level of certification and compliance, maybe that's available locally, and can provide the necessary certifications and attestations to meet the requirements. So we're going to run through that as well. Obviously networking, Graham just mentioned a great example of networking, making sure that my applications can communicate with local offices, local employees, can communicate back to devices that are in the on-premises location. That's been a concern, but the good news is that if you work with folks like ourselves or other providers, we can really shape the design of the cloud environment to meet those use cases and sign off on that design prior to implementing it. So we can address that, and there's a lot of flexibility there from a cloud networking perspective. Support, obviously, making sure that you have the right support not only after the fact so that you can utilize the environment as you need it, but what does the support look like in a design phase or an implementation phase? Is the provider and the managed service provider going to help you achieve the outcomes that you're looking for? And hopefully we're going to be able to address how we both address that specific point. Obviously, cost, as you can consume cloud services, certain cloud services can be more complex than others in terms of costs, as well as predictability of cost. And so this is a general concern that folks have when they look to the cloud. And obviously, performance is key for your applications, making sure that they perform as needed or even better than they do today, so that you can provide the right customer experience to your end customers and users as well. So these are key concerns, but hopefully as we walk through, we'll address how we both meet those concerns and really can elevate the levels that we provide in each of these different areas. So if we look at the cloud landscape, there's a lot of choice, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of cloud solutions, there's different ways of doing things, and choosing the right cloud isn't always very easy. There's, as you can see, a plethora of different considerations that you should really be looking at when evaluating the cloud, whether it's the global nature of that cloud, can they service my business across different regions, what does the pricing look like, what are their SLAs and performance, what does the migration process look like, and can the provider assist me with getting through that journey and getting me to the outcome that I look for, and other things like protection and availability. So lots of considerations as we look to choosing the right cloud. And if we first look at one of the first things that we would evaluate is which cloud is going to best, which cloud is going to be best managing and matching my performance needs. So this is something that we commonly see from our side, and you should be asking the provider and the cloud provider, can they meet my specific application performance needs? How can I evaluate that they're going to do that ahead of time so that my expectations are met? Is there a financially backed SLA around performance so that obviously if the provider states that they can meet their application performance needs, what do the SLAs look like around that so that it can have some teeth and some kind of backbone behind that to validate those application performance requirements. And really also, as you look towards having performance to meet your application needs, what does that then translate through into cost? Is there a solution, or does the solution provide the performance that I need at the right price point that my business desires? These are key pieces to evaluate as well. We touched on security being a big concern as folks move towards the cloud, and as we move our data and applications to the cloud, will that data be secure and protected? That's probably a question that you have in your mind right now. So as we evaluate providers, and we would really encourage this from both sides, it's really key to first understand, does the provider meet my specific industry requirements? And also, does it meet my specific geographical requirements? Obviously, with things like Brexit and GDPR, you may have a need to house your data within the UK. Do they provide data sovereignty, and do they guarantee that that data stays within the regions that you're contracting to as well? So that's a key requirement. Also, with security and compliance, it's important to be able to have conversations with the provider to understand, yes, you may have these certifications, but can I speak through those and see how they relate to my specific industry as well? So we feel like, yes, compliance certifications are one piece of the puzzle, but also making sure that you always have that guiding hand and human contact within the cloud provider to be able to understand how they relate the compliance to your specific organization and industry as well. And if we talk about security and data protection, as you house these mission critical services in the cloud, it's important also to evaluate what backup options do I have? Is the backup built in for that, or do I need to add that in myself? What disaster recovery options do I have to make sure my data is in a separate location that I can spin up and instantiate as needed if a disaster was to occur or a security incident were to occur? What does the protection of my application environment look like? So again, these are key considerations that you should make as you're evaluating the cloud as well. We touched on support, the support experience. Obviously, potentially you're at the start of your cloud journey, or you're in the investigation phase. Where should you start? Where should you look at? You may not have the resources in-house to migrate yourself, so maybe the migration process is a key criteria for moving to the cloud. What does the provider that you're evaluating actually provide in terms of migration services to get you from point A to point B? Migration over time in the last number of years has got more seamless, but it does take a collaboration between the provider and their design staff with your organization to make sure that that's as smooth as possible, that we test it ahead of time and we validate what it's going to look like to achieve that success that you need. And also after the fact, what does the level of support look like? What support options are built in? Often when folks are evaluating maybe some of the bigger cloud providers, it may be missed that actually those support options are an additional cost for an organization to bear. It's often a percentage of the overall spend with that cloud provider. So it's important to evaluate what does the support option look like, what is the response times, and again, what's the associated cost with that? What does the overall experience look like? Is a really critical component to evaluate. And will pricing and billing be easy to understand? Again, cloud gives you great outcomes in terms of agility, ease of use, the ability to scale, and great levels of availability and performance. But obviously, price is number one. Are the prices easy to understand? Are they all inclusive? Is it really easy to decipher as a non-technical person from the initial rollout of that solution? As the environment grows, as I project my business to grow as well, how does the process look like to forecast the cloud expenses? Again, there's a variety of different models within different cloud providers that can be very complex to understand. And again, hopefully as we run through the slides toward the end and talk about our approach, we talk about the need to simplify the pricing and be able to budget and forecast for that. And again, will the bill be easy to interpret to all areas of the organization, or will it need a PhD to interpret as well? So that's been a common challenge that we've seen in the industry, and something that we've spent a lot of time working on to address from our perspective. So you may be at this crossroads right now in terms of what you're evaluating. Obviously, you have your production site today, but do you choose to continue and refresh that primary location? Do you consider a general purpose cloud or a cloud service provider in the market? Or do you consider someone like iland and working with CMI to deliver a cloud platform for your organization? We're going to look briefly through the different approaches and some of the pitfalls and things to watch out for. So if we kind of actually build the slide out and really look at the primary site, there's a lot of success criteria, as we just mentioned, to evaluate. So if we look at something like the capability of the primary site or the on-premises infrastructure, yes, as you refresh it, it may be great for application performance. It may provide you the compute and memory that you need. But as the environment evolves over time or ages, that performance may decrease. And the ability to scale those individual component parts of your IT infrastructure can be a big challenge from a cost and an implementation perspective. Things like being able to individually size workloads and have custom pricing just for what you need is a challenge. You have to pay all up front for what you need within a traditional approach. And that geographical diversity piece, having additional geographical sites is, again, a challenge that we brought up right at the start of the webinar. How do we deploy this globally and manage it from my organization's perspective? Security, we can build in security ourselves, we can manage the security and we can maintain it. But we may be missing specific components, or there may be additional costs for those components, such as vulnerability scanning, for example. To achieve disaster recovery and backup, that's an additional cost for an organization to consider. It may be something that you don't have today or that you need, but as you invest in that primary location, this could be a gap that is currently present, is the ability to replicate that data offsite. In terms of compatibility and networking, I think that's covered by the primary location. But again, from a support perspective, you're managing all of the compliance, the implementation, the keeping the lights on, and the maintenance activities, and this can be a drag on the business and the operational efficiency of that business as well. If we look at the general purpose clouds, they're very capable in terms of what they provide. But from that, they do have limitations specifically related to the sizes of workloads that you can achieve within those environments. They have very fixed sizes that may not completely match what you're looking for as an organization. They also lack flexibility in relation to being able to physically locate equipment that you have already invested in and bring that into the cloud. So this is a key piece as well. Security, yes, you can do security in these general purpose clouds, but they're optional extras that you have to pay for, manage, maintain, and utilize. Connectivity, there's maybe less flexibility in the levels of end user connectivity that you can achieve within these general purpose clouds. Maybe you have a setup on premises that you need to achieve that's not currently available within these environments. These environments tend to utilize different technologies compared to what you're traditionally utilizing on premises. Often we find customers using VMware in their local location. These general purpose clouds don't use that technology. And so there can be a key challenge with not only migrating those systems successfully, but also maintaining the knowledge that you have locally to actually manage those systems after the fact. Your staff and your IT are focused on certain technology, and as they move and look at these general purpose clouds, they would need to reskill and reevaluate and redesign their knowledge as well. And again, from a support perspective and a DRX perspective and a compliance perspective, yes, you can gain access to these services in the public cloud or the general purpose cloud, but there are again optional extras that you pay for, and you may not get the human interaction that you desire within those environments as well. So hopefully, as I'm going to go into the next slides, we're going to run through how iland addresses these different success criteria. But we feel, from our perspective, we have an integrated, easy to understand from a pricing perspective, but we integrate all of the common components that you need as an organization. So we build in security, we build in data protection, we build in disaster recovery, we have support at no cost, and we have expertise and compliance services available to you leverage as a business. So we're going to run through some of those specific examples, but we feel we've taken an approach where we look at the common concerns of organizations, the common concerns that they have with general purpose cloud, and we've tried to address those with our solution as well. So with that, let me take a look at the iland approach and just run through a little bit about how we take care of cloud services and cloud hosting at iland. So if I go to this slide, I just wanted to touch on iland as a business. For the folks who may not have heard of iland previously, we've actually been operating in the space for over 25 years. And actually for the last 12 or 13 years, we've been focused on cloud hosting and disaster recovery as a service. Disaster recovery as a service, if you have encountered iland before, is actually our specialization. We're seen as a leader, for example, in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for disaster recovery as a service. We do host a lot of mission critical systems for organizations globally, including a lot of SaaS providers themselves who house their applications on our infrastructure. We operate across 11 global regions. So you can see here in the UK, London and Manchester. In the EU, we have Amsterdam, and a lot of different choices across the globe. This is really critical to the question that you may have around data sovereignty and compliance. So you can choose to house your applications and your workloads, for example, in London, contract to those services, and that's where they remain. They don't automatically move to a different region by default. You control where your data sits, and we maintain that. Now, you also then have the free choice to then maybe replicate your data to Manchester to maintain disaster recovery as a service. So we are able to enable the ability to maintain that data sovereignty as an organization. All of our services have an 100% availability SLA, so we make sure that, again, our services are always on for your organization, but there's SLAs behind the scenes from a legal perspective to obviously have confidence in those SLAs as well. Our support experience, again, we provide support integrated within the platform, and our support does have a great net promoter and support satisfaction score, but that's really critical, again, for the migration, the deployment, and the enablement of using this technology. And so we aim to help with CMI across the way to get you to the point where you're consuming these cloud services. So if we talk about cloud hosting or infrastructure as a service, as it's known, we have a platform that really enables organizations to scale, be flexible, but at the same time have the security and the billing pieces covered from the iland perspective. So first of all, we have a dedicated compliance team that works with CMI that maintain a plethora of different certifications, attestations, and frameworks globally. So you may see some of the ones that you're looking for as an industry here listed. Some of the great ones that we touch on, obviously, with things like ISO 27001, 20000 or 9001 around quality. One of the nice ones that we achieved recently was also the BS 10012, which links directly to the GDPR and data protection framework. So as an organization, you obviously in a regulated industry, we should have the certifications, attestations, and frameworks that you need. But also we can collaborate with you if you need additional documentation or certifications to move to the cloud as well. So What makes us different is a lot of cloud providers have a great deal of certification, as you can see, but we have a dedicated compliance team that can work with the organization in the design, implementation, and ongoing basis to help you with audits, complete documentation, and provide you with transparency into that information as well. One of the things that CMI and iland can provide you with is compliance reports on demand. So this is not only the certification documentation that's freely accessible. Again, you can query that with our team and get more detail into specific elements, but also related to the infrastructure and the hosted applications. Generated reports can be made available to you that actually can detail the level of compliance related to your application hosting as well. And these are available at all times through the iland experience.
Sam, actually, we had a question on that was sent to me yesterday. Just there was a general question around security and GDPR, which was sort of covered off. It was, the ability to audit this. I guess, if a client needed to audit this, they'd obviously come to our team at CMI, and then we'd work with you, and we give them access to these reports and understand exactly what the context of the audit is to make sure we're giving them the right information.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and we believe obviously it's great having things like certifications, but without being able to kind of query or interrogate or work with a provider to really truly understand what that means, that's the piece that you need when it comes to audits. And so we have that full level of transparency when it comes to making these reports available, but then helping you navigate, customize, and understand how these relate to your organization or industry. So yeah, we can both help with that piece as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
So security, obviously security, as I mentioned, this is a constant topic in the news and in the industry, making sure that your applications are hardened, that they're protected, that your customers' mission critical data and your organization's mission critical data is secure as possible. And so what we do on our platform side is that as you move your applications to our cloud environment, we build in a level of security built for the enterprise. So we have, for example, default technologies that run always on behind the scenes, things like antivirus and anti-malware, vulnerability scanning, intrusion prevention, or these are all built into the solution. So as you navigate and migrate your applications to the cloud, these technologies will kick in automatically. Your IT teams do not need to maintain these technologies or understand or procure, manage, maintain, or install. You simply consume the outcome and the service that you need. So if your applications need to make sure that they have anti-malware and antivirus to understand if there's any threats there, your application can simply consume it as needed. So this is all built in as a core design principle of our platform. And with all of these that you can see briefly on screen, back to the compliance reports, security reports are available on demand as well. So we can get a detail of the current security posture of your organization. We can actually highlight maybe areas that you can investigate and tune together to improve the security that you have as an organization. So these are always on, giving you insight into how you can improve security overall as well. And if we briefly touch on, again, I mentioned a bunch of them, but some of the kind of the things that you need as standard, encryption at rest. So anytime a workload is running on our cloud hosting platform, we're actually providing encryption at rest by default on our storage platform. There are additional things that you can do around workload encryption on our platform as well. And as you evaluate the cloud, this is a really key piece to evaluate, because often with other cloud environments, this isn't a built-in piece. You actually have to add it, manage it, maintain it yourself. And again, we have various pieces that are providing scanning and information and insight to enable you to improve the security of your applications over time. So one of the things that we see pretty typically is one of our technologies actually runs a vulnerability scan on at all times. And that report will detail any vulnerabilities that may exist and give your IT teams insight into how to improve the security of your applications. And you can run these on demand at any time as well. So this helps with penetration testing or auditing purposes as well, to prove the level of security that you put in place for your applications and data. We talked on support again, working with CMI together. There'll always be access to both teams to make sure that we're supporting you through that journey. And I think, Graham, I think we had a question around kind of what the migration experience looks like, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, one of the questions really was, how, I guess a couple of questions around migrations, just how automated is migration and the amount of manual work, and then examples of successful migrations and obviously the reverse, lessons.
Yeah, certainly. So I would never say that migration is an automated experience. I'd love to say that, but I think the reality is different. I think the thing to consider with migration is a lot of it is all about the planning and the interaction that you have with the cloud provider and your managed service provider here as well. And so it's really key to take an assessment of what you're running today, and then collaborate together to understand how all of those applications communicate with each other, how they're accessed by the customers, how they're accessed by end users, what is the necessary levels of availability and performance. All of these pieces need to be considered upfront. And then from that discovery process, we work together with organizations to build out basically a project plan and a migration strategy. Moving the data is really pretty simple, to be honest with you, and maintaining that data synchronization between your current site and the cloud that you're moving into is really seamless. But then using that plan, we actually verify with a testing phase to understand what does performance look like, what does data availability look like, what does the security side of things look like, how long is the migration going to take. We can actually do a test and validate that process. And then we work with your team to actually schedule in the best possible time to do this. So this might be out of hours during the middle of the night, it might be a weekend. We work together to find that right time, and then we work to then move those systems into the cloud. The good thing with all of these migration strategies is if something happens that we didn't kind of maybe predict, which is very rare, you always have that failback mechanism to get back into your on-premises environment. It's that full level of portability as well. So it really is tying to this whole support slide. It's really critical to evaluate support that you're looking at within a cloud provider. What is the level of design expertise, pre-sales, implementation, and guiding hand to get to the cloud as well? So I think that's a great question to look at.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Sam, is around the the examples. Absolutely more than happy to to provide examples both that CMI have been directly involved in, or where relevant because of industry or application or something unique to you that iland have. So that's something we can pick up with you once we start that planning phase really.
Yeah, and this is something that we do on a weekly basis for organizations. Maybe a small site with maybe 10 virtual machines, it may be something with 1,500, for example. And those different approaches maybe take a more phased approach where we do things in a staggered approach while maintaining the ability to communicate between both sites to maintain services. And we can also do it based on criticality or application. So we can really work with you to define the strategy for success and then put that into place as well. So great points there. As we mentioned, cost is a big thing when considering cloud. So the iland approach really is, first of all, to keep pricing as simple as possible. So for our infrastructure as a service or cloud hosting platform, we simply base it on how much compute capacity that you need and how much storage. There may be some additional components related to networking, like IP addresses, but it really is very simple. It's the component parts, the resources themselves. And we can fine tune those based on your exact requirements. And we're going to go into this very shortly, but we can work together to run an assessment on your environment, understand what's truly being used in your local location, and tune the resources that are available in the cloud to that specific use case. So by making it very simple, it's easy to predict and budget and forecast. But also we can optimize cost and we can reduce cost for organizations, because often you have to procure hardware locally that may be slightly oversized to meet demand and scale. We can fine tune that cloud environment to the specific scale that your applications need. And as you need more resources over time, you can just incrementally purchase the resources you need for that specific project rather than buying something all up front. So it is very flexible, very easy to understand, and how we can, I guess, contrast to previous or other service providers in the market is, again, we keep it very simple. It's all inclusive. The security is built in, the data protection is built in, the networking is built in, and it's really easy to understand for the component parts. With other approaches that you may be looking at, you're paying for each individual transaction or micro piece of the infrastructure, and that can be very complex to understand and forecast and understand. The other piece where we differentiate ourselves based on cost is we understand it's important to see both cost historically, but also cost in real time, so that you can alter course, adjust, and predict as your cloud environment grows. And so you can see here a visual. These are all available to make available to you. We can provide cost not only in real time, but also historically, so that you can evaluate how specific pieces are being added up together, and the overall spend and how that breaks down for an organization. So we do have full transparency, and again, an all-inclusive model, which simplifies the experience. And if we look at the critical aspects to consider for an overall TCO, so you may be interested now in taking a look at what cloud has to offer. I think when you consider an overall TCO for on-premises, and then you consider a TCO into cloud, sometimes it can be a situation where you may just look at the compute resources and storage. You may look at the total number of machines that you wish to look, but you may be missing certain other elements that are critical to look at from a TCO perspective. So what is the cost of, for example, virtualization and operating system licensing that enables the ability to host my applications? What is the cost of data protection licensing? What is the additional cost of security software, monitoring software, and application licensing? What hidden costs may be in place for things like bandwidth and networking between workloads or to customers and end users? These are critical pieces that are optional extras with other cloud environments. And again, what does support, compliance, and maintenance look like with a cloud provider? Again, because most don't bake this in by default into their cloud platform. And how many folks does it take today to manage all of these pieces within your environment, and how maybe we can optimize this within the cloud as well? So again, the iland approach is to build all of these things in by default and simply charge customers for the amount of compute and storage that they need. With other cloud environments, these things are additional costs that you need to consider in your TCO from your side of things as well. Graham, I don't know if you have any points here that you want to mention.
Yeah, actually, it's good timing, because Ian actually posted a question a little bit earlier on. Do we have any price comparison tables between on-premise versus cloud available? So that's really looking at this sort of cost comparison and TCO. So we can help you through that, Ian. I guess we considered trying to put something in here for this deck, but we were sort of a little bit fearful it gets a bit complex and not necessarily relevant to everybody on the webinar because of sizes of infrastructure, etc. But absolutely, as part of how we'll help you through that assessment as to whether cloud is right for you, not just technically but commercially. We'll help you through a sort of an in-depth TCO to compare the 3-5 year future costs of an on-premise versus the same period in the cloud.
No, definitely.
I think that was probably the only cost question at the moment, actually.
Perfect. I'll move to a couple of others. Again, it's really critical, again, when evaluating the cloud, you're moving really mission critical services and data. And so what does the experience look like in terms of data protection and backup for those workloads? Again, for all of different environments that we've evaluated, these are optional things that you need to, again, add on, pay for, and manage and maintain to get to this level of data protection that you need as an organization. With the iland and CMI approach, we actually build in data protection by default. It's built into the platform, and for every workload, we can provide this level of backup. And more critically, we provide the ability to restore the data within those systems back whenever you need it as well. So this is kind of taken care of, and you can simply, again, consume it as needed as well. Now, obviously, with COVID-19 and the move towards remote working, flexibility of networking, as we alluded to right at the start, is really critical. Also, having flexibility to meet the architecture needs and the different needs of your organization from a networking perspective is really critical as well. And so what we do from our side is we build in some really advanced networking by default into our core platform to enable things like remote working via VPN, for example, or accessing services publicly over the internet. There's a lot of flexibility there. Or if your organization leverages more advanced networking setups that have seamless networking between branch offices, and you need to enable that, that again is possible within our cloud environment. So again, this is going to be a critical piece, and I think, Graham, we had a few questions around networking, but as you shift resources to the cloud and you still have services locally that need to communicate with those applications, having flexibility of networking to enable those two things to communicate with each other is going to be a critical piece to evaluate.
Yeah, and it's a very common question, but yeah, and I guess an obvious thing that people will need to consider. So, specifically, examples of, on-site door control, time and attendance software, where there's actually needs to be some form of device, CCTV, security monitoring. So there's some physical device on premise that needs to be able to sort of integrate maybe in with the the infrastructure or an application maybe. And another one really around sort of large file sizes. So maybe relevant sort of architects and that sort of industry where they can use the cloud-based infrastructure, but maybe they want to have some local cloud storage for sort of ease of use of those large files. So you've answered the question, the fact that depending on what the situation is that we need to be looking at, we can overcome those networking challenges. So from I guess a user experience, it's for all intents and purposes seamless to you.
Yeah, certainly. Just rather than communicating locally over a local network, we just architect the design of the network so that those specific components, maybe like CCTV or doors, key cards, and things like that, can communicate with the applications that are now housed in the cloud, and we can do that in a secure manner as well. So we can definitely take care of that. And again, this comes down to the level of support and planning that we both offer to get to that stage as well. So that's a nice segue where we talk about, well, we've been talking about the benefits of cloud and the benefits of the iland solution. How do you take the next step and how do you get there? So from our perspective, we built a tool that your IT teams can use. It's called Iland Catalyst. It's freely available to download on the web. And what this tool does is it takes an assessment automatically of a customer's on-premises environment. So it's really quick to run. It probably takes maybe 2 to 3 minutes to gather the information from your environment. And then you can choose what you're trying to achieve in the cloud, whether it's something like cloud hosting, like we're talking about today, or whether it's something like disaster recovery or data protection for your on-premises environment. So we take a copy, we understand what your environment looks like, and with this tool, it enables us to take that data and insight and ensure that the solution that we're providing to you is going to be compatible with what you're trying to achieve. We can take the information and optimize the spend of the cloud to address your specific use case, and then having all of the information and the compatibility and the technical requirements ahead of time allows us to drive that project forward in a very speedy amount of time as well. So we definitely encourage this from our perspective as a next step. It's a very kind of hands-off approach, enables us to understand what's going on in your environment and then interpret that to be able to shape, optimize, right size, provide you with the costing and the commercial aspects of a solution, whether it's, again, our infrastructure as a service or cloud hosting offering, or whether it's one of our other data protection offerings as well. So it's a great next step as well to take within the cloud journey. No commitment, and it allows you to really assess, is Iland and CMI the right choice? Do I need to look at kind of what my options look like for my applications as well? So with that, Graham, I know I've been speaking for a long time. I don't know if there's any other questions as we've been walking through as well.
That's great, Sam. No, I think it's been really useful. I've got a couple of questions. We've covered a few off here. So, I mean, the first one really was around, ensuring data systems hosted in the UK, etc. Now, we covered off, the data sovereignty and the physical locations of data. So, again, for the majority of our clients that are going to be sort of UK based, that's fairly simple. For those of you that do have those sort of geographic locations, beyond the UK, Europe and beyond, then we can work that through with you. I think another question here probably is in some way relates to sort of the local appliance is, but printing. That's a common one we hear. How does printing work?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we again, we'll probably want to delve specifically into your use case and how the applications, I guess, communicate with the print server, where the print server is going to be based. And again, we take a look at the network to be key, because again, if we can have network connectivity between the cloud and where these pieces are located, we can obviously send print jobs and things like that to those locations. Also, it may be a case where you are evaluating kind of what you do there in the future as well. So I think let's probably want to look at your specific example, and then definitely we have strategies and technology we can work together to enable that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the one thing just to reassure people is, 90% plus of businesses that we move into some form of cloud infrastructure have a local printing requirement. So historically used to be a lot of challenges, and there still can be challenges, but it's a fairly well sort of tested and mature environment now. I guess a couple of last questions really before we need to move on. So the question of lock-in. I mean, how easy is it to change cloud providers if necessary? Now, clearly, Sam, from from an iland and a CMI perspective, we hope our clients won't choose to do that, but it's a key consideration for them.
Oh yeah, it's a huge consideration, and I think giving customers the choice to make that decision and having that as an option is really critical in my opinion, because if we're not offering the level of service that you need in various respects, we want you to be able to make a different choice, and that's been the iland ethos, I guess, from day one. Being VMware based, if you're a VMware based customer today locally on premises, the good thing about VMware is that format is fully portable to iland, but there is a wide choice of VMware-based cloud providers. And the good thing here with the solution is the machines remain in that format. And so it's very seamless to be able to take a copy of those systems and run that within another VMware-based cloud provider, but also locally back on premises if you want to bring some things back. So we believe in offering customers that choice, and through our cloud interface, there is the ability to get copies of that data back. I think what I would caution folks on is if they're evaluating those general purpose environments, they're using completely different technology sets, they're using proprietary APIs, and it can be very hard to deleverage as a result, because there's that one singular choice versus a choice of multiple hundreds of different VMware-based options to choose from. So I would really encourage that to be a key piece of the criteria as well.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. I've got a couple of questions left. Mark and Damien, what I will do, I'll pick up your questions after. I'm conscious of time, and I don't want to sort of over commit each of your time. One thing I did have a question was just around virtual desktop. Now, really just to address that, that's what we've been talking today has been much more around sort of the back end, I guess, the server infrastructure, extending that virtualization technology and virtualizing our desktop environment is something that's getting an increasing amount of airtime, I guess, certainly because of COVID more recently. So we are actually intending to run a very specific webinar on that topic, specifically. So keep your eyes out for that. Great. Okay. I think what we want to do now, Sam, without further ado, is if we can maybe move to the prize draw for the trainers. So really just thanks to Sam for taking the time today, for iland, for the great work you do with us and supporting us on this webinar, and of course for donating these great trainers. So I think, as I said in my email yesterday, for those of you that are still committing to your New Year resolutions, maybe this will just help keep that going. So I'm just going to change the screen back to myself quickly, because I've just created a it's a bit of a simple online tool. Can you see that, Sam?
I'm just going to verify. I'm just going to come out my presentation. Just bear with me a second. You can see it. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so bear with me, Maria. I'm going to just hit the spin, and somebody is going to be the lucky winner. I do want to make sure that some of these names here haven't actually joined today, but I think we've got the vast majority of here. So good luck, everybody. Here we go. I think, there we go. Georgia, do we have? Yes, we have Georgia. I hope I'm pronouncing your name. You're online. So Georgia, I shall be in contact with you after. Congratulations. You've got a brand new pair of trainers whizzing its way to you. Great.
Awesome.
Okay, if I can just change back to yourself, Sam, just for that sort of closing slide, which I think probably is just a goodbye contact slide. Thank you all for joining. I think really, just to close off, really the next steps are, if there's any questions that come out into your mind after this, then feel free to reach out to myself or the team here at CMI. Mark and Damien, I've got your couple of questions here, so I'll make sure we'll be in contact and answer those for you. So really just reach out to ourselves. We will be in contact for those of you who attended today, just to answer any other questions or understand your thoughts, help you on that journey. And really the next step, if we feel that this is between something that is right for your business, is to take that cloud assessment. We'll look at your infrastructure, understand what the options are, and use our Catalyst tool to right size this, so we can actually start to give you some feel of, technically how this solution works, in the back end, the experience for users, and ultimately obviously the commercial structure of that, and make that move to the cloud for you. So thanks for your time again today. Hope that was useful, and thanks again, Sam, and everybody over at iland for your support.
My pleasure. Thanks everyone for their time as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.